My name is Nicola Banks, and I'm from Communications 1D1 231, and this is my audience. So today's speech is going to be persuading my audience about why cooking should be allowed in schools for students to learn during their junior or senior year. So we all know, starting up as young adults, that most of the time our parents cook for us. And with that being said, a lot of us do not really know how to cook, but cooking is an important skill of becoming an adult. Just like driving a car or getting your first bank card or having your first job is all a part of being an adult. Now, granted, some kids in high school have already had a lot of these experiences of being an adult at a very early age, but there are some students that have not had this experience, being that they are just fortunate that their parents or someone else was able to provide this for them. So, when it comes to cooking in schools, a lot of students are required to take mainly academic courses. These courses could include like your Englishes, your maths, your sciences, and your history. There are electives, and out of all the electives that students have to take, there's only one required elective, which is physical education. Physical education is a course that is required for students during their 9th grade year so that they can have their body active and lose weight and become healthier versions of themselves. Well, if we're working on our physical aspect of our body, we also need to focus on the internal aspect of our body, which could be within eating healthy. When it comes to cooking in schools, a lot of times students can either bring in some of their own foods, but because of COVID now probably, and also just sanitation reasons, the school can provide the food for them. But a lot of school districts have a very low budget, and this makes it hard for them to be able to provide food for students to be able to cook and learn how to cook. For those who are cookers, they know that prepping a meal can become very expensive. But however, when students graduate high school and they're on their own in the real world, this can also be a challenge for them, not knowing that cooking can be a lot more detailed than they thought. For instance, when it comes to cooking, you have to have your appliances. This means you need to have a stove, you need to have an oven, you need to have a refrigerator, you need to have a blender, you need to have a microwave, and so on. That's just appliances. Dishwasher, which is optional, but you can also wash dishes by hand. A lot of students have a chore at home, which is washing dishes. Some students are lucky enough that their parents do not make them wash dishes. But dishes is something that you need to learn how to do. Even though it sounds simple, it is things that are important when it comes to washing dishes, such as using hot water, soaking dishes on the left side or right side of the sink, making sure that you're using the right kind of chemicals on your dishes to make sure that they get properly cleaned and thoroughly cleaned, especially when you're washing them by hand and they're not going through an electronic dishwasher. Another thing that students need to know when it comes to cooking on their own is that they need silverware, utensils. They need kitchen gadgets such as a whisk, the cheese grater, and it's dozens and dozens and dozens of kitchen items that students could use to cook. And a lot of students don't know this until you actually get to cooking one day, and then your recipe calls for a peeler or a masher for your mashed potatoes. These things can be very pricey, and that is something that comes along with becoming an adult. Alongside of needing kitchen appliances, alongside of needing kitchen gadgets, and alongside of needing kitchen food, you also need to be able to have prep. You need to have recipes, you need to be able to have something that can guide you. So a lot of students, they struggle with being able to follow a recipe. They get confused. They don't know how to preheat an oven. They don't know how to make certain things when it comes to cooking. And this can be understandable because as a lot of adults, there's a very large percentage of adults that do not know how to cook, particularly men, because they're used to, having their wife or someone or their mother or someone like that to cook for them. But cooking should be allowed in schools so that when students are out on their own in the real world, they have a way of providing for themselves. A lot of times now, college numbers are dropping when it comes to students attending schools. A lot of people are dropping out. A lot of people are having a hard time finding housing, finding shelter. A lot of people are relying on government assistance. A lot of restaurants have very long waiting lists, have very long fast food lines, and students need to be able to know how to do a simple adult task, such as getting up in the morning, scrambling eggs, frying some bacon, and maybe even a biscuit, or even if a student doesn't want to have a big meal, cooking oatmeal, or when it comes to dinner, being able to bake a pizza for themselves. I think cooking should be allowed in schools so that students will be able to have something that they can turn into a possible hobby. If they don't fall in love with the passion of cooking, they can also just use it as a bonding experience with a loved one at home. There's a lot of great benefits that can come from cooking. Not only can it be a future career or a future hobby, it can also be a great way to keep people healthy and not eating all of the very, very harsh fast foods that are in our fast food industry nowadays. And cooking is just a great way to get that branch into adult life and learning how to become an adult and guiding yourself through being able to put together a recipe and being happy at your final ending of like, wow, I cooked that, and seeing someone else eat it and seeing the look on their face of how they enjoyed it, or if they didn't enjoy it, hopefully they enjoyed it. And yeah, so that's my reasoning on why cooking should be allowed in schools.